I think it's no secret that my favorite character so far has been Baylan. One of my favorite characters, I should say, and I think a lot of you agree with me that from the jump, he was the most enticing. He has something brooding inside, some deep, mysterious mystique about his character that attracts us to this type of a middle character, similar to a Qui-Gon type. But I'm here to tell you that whatever you thought of him up until this point, Episode 6 was definitely the craziest ones out of them all. I didn't think Episode 5 could be topped, but honestly guys, after rewatching it, Episode 5 and Episode 6 are just two different sides of the coin. I love them both, but I'm kind of split in the middle between them. This episode reveals much more than any previous ones ever did. Through all this time, we got pieces of info regarding Baylan and even less about Shin Hati and what the duo's plans really are. Episode 6 was a cavalcade. Both future plans and past traumas were revealed. It is of course made apparent that Baylan has gone through a lot, as we suspected, but one thing is for sure, he is playing both Morgan and Thrawn. I think he is being deceitful, and what's worse, I think Thrawn discovered his secret plot almost immediately. This moment, this glance left me feeling that Thrawn knows something more about him. You see, once I explain who Dave Filoni modeled Baylan after, you will get all of it. Why Baylan is so cynical about the Jedi, about the fleeting power, about the Force in general. We see him tell Shin Hati that he is after something much bigger, a new beginning. Well, guess who else was after all that about 4,000 years ago? That's right, Darth Traya. I've been pondering this for a while now. Ever since being introduced to Baylan, every single fan was more or less fascinated by Baylan's character, what he stood for. He was mysterious, he had depth. It was obvious he once held these Jedi ideals, but now they were long abandoned. And however, at the same time, you see him have sympathy for Ahsoka, and he doesn't want to kill more Jedi because there are so few left. Ray Stevenson definitely gave us a memorable character we will cherish for a long while, I think. At first, he was similar to a Qui-Gon character, then he seemed more like a Dooku Fallen Jedi vibe, but now, after Episode 6, the complexity of Traya is something undeniable that I see in him, especially seeing that Baylan visibly mocks the Jedi as well as the Empire, including Thrawn's ambitions.
That sort of power is fleeting. What I seek is the beginning, so I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
If you are familiar with Darth Traya from KOTOR 2 and the Sith Triumvirate, then undeniably, she and Baylan share most of their traits of not only being in the middle, neither dark nor light, neither Jedi nor Sith, but both of them display a destructive middle attitude. They weren't just middle of the road. Traya wanted to destroy both sides, thinking it is the light and the dark that's the main problem for the galaxy, and Baylan just echoed kind of the same sentiment, telling Shin Hati that both sides, whether it was the Jedi and the Republic or the Sith with their Empire, both had failed. It was a fleeting power, and he was after something greater. To understand how Dave Filoni was inspired and wrote for Baylan, what his motivations are, we first need to talk about Traya and how the Jedi Order shaped her thinking. It's another connection to Baylan and how the Jedi Order made him feel instead. Essentially, Traya's story starts with her having a direct relationship with one of our other favorite characters, and that being Revan. In fact, back then she was known as Kreia, and she served as a Jedi Master to Revan, even before the Mandalorian Wars started. Kreia was a mentor to Revan and was immensely strong in the Force, similar to her pupil. However, she was a contentious figure within the Jedi community back then, often challenging their established codes and beliefs, similar to how we see Dooku later on. This was a risky stance to take, of course, especially considering that period when Kreia lived, because it was a time that the Jedi Order was becoming increasingly dogmatic and intolerant of dissidents. The tipping point came when Revan, of course, defected and embraced the dark side. In turn, this launched a catastrophic war known as the Jedi Civil War, and the Council, well, they didn't waste time in holding Kreia responsible and even went as far as to exile her, blaming her for Revan's fall to darkness. She had failed as Jedi Master. Kreia felt betrayed and abandoned, so she chose to explore the dark side, a path she had never walked before. We don't know much about Baylan's Imperial times, but we can assume that after the Jedi Order was destroyed, he might have also dabbled and explored the dark side. He even says to Shin Hati during episode 6 that after he watched the Jedi Temple burn, he was lost. He couldn't find meaning for a long time. And similar to Kreia, she turned to the dark side at the wrong time because she embraced it during the cataclysmic event at Malachor 5. Malachor 5 was a catastrophic event that involved Kreia. She was literally destroying the planet and millions were dying. Mitra Surik severed her connection to the Force, and thus Darth Nihilus was born from the Force wound on Malachor. Could we see a similar thing in Peridia from Baylan, a catastrophic event that might lead to the creation of something even darker? You see, Kreia was overwhelmed by the immense suffering, and thus she fully transformed into a dark side entity. This is when she abandoned the Kreia moniker and she started calling herself Darth Treya. She then spent years building the Sith Triumvirate with Darth Nihilus and Darth Sion. However, her constant questioning of Sith doctrines led to her expulsion from her own Sith Order because both her apprentices were getting tired of her. Nihilus and Sion gathered their forces and severed her connection to the Force again, similar to Mitra Surik. So at this juncture, Kreia chose to identify as neither Sith nor Jedi, but something in between. Sounds familiar? By the way, another connection from Treya to this series, Sion was her apprentice, but Baylan just rode the Eye of Sion to Peridia. Honestly, guys, Dave couldn't make this any more apparent than it already is, but wait, there's more. This is where the Treya-Baylan connection gets even more deeper. You see, Treya was frustrated by her rejection from both sides and the Force itself, so she developed a new perspective. She believed that the Force was the root cause of all suffering and conflict in the galaxy. In her view, the Force manipulated the destinies of sentient beings, pitting Jedi against Sith in an eternal struggle, so she envisioned a galaxy free from the Force's influence, where individuals could control their own fates. To prove her theory, she needed evidence that life could exist without the Force. This led her to Mitra Surik, who had also severed her connection to the Force due to the trauma she experienced at Malachor 5. Kreia saw in Mitra a kindred spirit, of course, and took on the role as her mentor. They both wanted to destroy Darth Nihilus. Ultimately, though, Kreia goes on to be exposed as kind of a hypocrite, because even though she hated the Force itself and wanted to get rid of it, she still used it. When questioned, she would even rationalize it. And to make things worse, Kreia had gone to Malachor 5 to form a new Jedi Order that blended both Jedi and Sith teaching. This was something unheard of at the time, and literally everybody hated it. This is again why I see a lot of Kreia in Baylan. He wants to start something new. He doesn't believe in what the Jedi did or the Sith. In the end, Kreia, similar to Baylan, was a paradoxical figure. While incredibly wise and powerful in the Force, she was also deeply conflicted and possibly insane at points. Her views on the Force were contradictory. She despised it but relied on its power. She criticized the redemption of others while changing her own identity multiple times, and she was an allegorical failure in the end, because when you walk the middle, you either gather everybody or you get abandoned by everybody, and this is what happened to Kreia. Talk about people abandoning you. This is also interesting to note, because the same as Treya's apprentices doubting her and rejecting her in the end, during this episode 6, we saw Shin Hati visibly at times question her master. She even called into question, what are they doing in this wasteland, searching for something that Baylan had promised. So you can already see the fractures of it. I'm thinking that if things go badly in the last 2 episodes for the duo, then Shin will call everything Baylan has said into question, and rightfully so, because we might find out soon that, similar to Kreia, Baylan might have gone insane also, but he is just more adept at hiding it. What's interesting to me is Thrawn also is a big wrench in all of this. I think he has not fully expressed how much he distrusts Baylan. From the moment he met him, I think Thrawn realized Baylan is going to be nothing but trouble for him. Secretly, this is why he elected to leave them on this planet stranded once he instructs them to go after Sabine and get rid of both her and Ezra. Knowing that Ahsoka is coming in the next episode, it's literally all up in the air. We have no idea who's going to align with whom, and I don't believe we can automatically assume Baylan will go back to Thrawn so easily. But hey, what did you think about the comparison between Kreia and Baylan? I would love to know what you guys think. Talk to me down below.